careful because they don't necessarily follow one in a sequential order.
Exactly.
So would you just kind of refresh us on that, and then we're going to turn to Scripture and see what resources we find there.
So there's 5 stages of grief. There's denial, there's anger, there's bargaining, which we talked about last week.
Yes, bargaining.
There's depression, and then there's acceptance.
Yes.
The key is to note that they don't necessarily follow a certain trajectory, a line of reasoning. You can experience one before you experience the other.
Can you experience more than one? Than one at the same time?
You sure can.
You can.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
you can have denial and depression all at the same time. And you would think they counteract each other, because denial is, I can't process that this death has happened, whereas depression is an acknowledgement that it's out of my control and is there. And so we can kind of be split brain. And part of us can say, okay, I can't accept this, but the other part is saying this is real. And it can happen at the same time.
Wow, wow.
And once again, that's why I reiterate that we need a professional to walk us through, because they will know how to rightly divide the issue and look at what's most important and break it down so that we can move forward towards a healthier goal.
So before we turn to our biblical passage, which is on Job, from your experience, have you been able to identify some of the reasons persons are afraid of mental health counselors, that they're afraid to seek professional help, especially when they're grieving? Have you identified what some of those reasons are?
I have. I've labeled it there's 3 major reasons why that happens. Number 1, we do not like a mirror put up in front of us. Most people, and I know we're in the age of selfies and all that good stuff.
But we don't want a mirror.
But we don't want a mirror. We don't want to see our flaws. We want to try to project the best image possible. And counselors help you see your flaws.
Yes.
And a lot of people are not ready for it. The second is the negative stigma that you're crazy. You know, we don't use that terminology anymore.
My mind was straight. I wouldn't need anybody to be telling me what to do and all that kind of thing.
Because we want control. We want to feel like we're in control, at least of ourselves. Well, we're not in control of ourselves. You know, so we will tell ourselves, if I go see someone, that will solidify that I'm not in control and I've lost my mind.
Okay.
The third is it's a spiritual battle. I think in the early church, when they were trying, psychology is a merger of philosophy and the medical field, neuroscience. So it's philosophy and neuroscience. The neuroscience is okay. Everybody accepts that. You can give a diagnosis and people will accept it all day long. Where the problem lies is the philosophy, because your philosophers were thinkers that thought outside of the box. So they kind of went against the grain, where when religion was the number one source of knowledge, they would look elsewhere. And I think that stigma has carried itself all the way down through the years, where they feel it's not spiritual, and it's changing, but counseling isn't necessarily spiritual, and that's not true. You know, Bible talks on several different occasions of how we need to understand our mind and how our mind needs to be sober. We need to be sober-minded, and we need to take care of it, because the enemy wants to come in and take over.
And the battle is a battle for the mind. I mean, remember that, right?
Yes.
The battle is a battle for, spiritual warfare is a battle for the mind, right?
That's correct.
Right?
Yeah, choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you want to have people who are educated in how the mind works, that believe in God.
Okay. Okay, okay. That should help many of us.
Yes.
And when we think about the mind, we think about the battle, we think about the challenges of the mind and managing grief and the battle that can be. Of course, we're reminded of the biblical character Job,
Yes.
who is one of your favorite characters, right,
Yes,
in
yes.
Scripture. And so if we were to open our Bibles tonight and just look at just one verse, most of us have read Job chapter 1, and so we won't go through his resume of riches, because that certainly was what he had. But I think the point here that will be a point of departure is when Satan presents himself with the sons of God. Apparently this was some heavenly council, and the Lord says to Satan, "Where are you coming from?" And really, many translations say, "So who are you representing?" And he said, "I represent the earth." He said, that's my kingdom. I'm representing the earth, from going to and fro in the earth and walking up and down among it, meaning that I have complete dominion. And then the question God asks Satan, he says, "Yes, you may think you control the world, but have you considered my servant Job?"
Yes.
There's somebody that you forgot about. His name is
Oh,
Job.
yes.
Why does Job mean so much to you?
So Job was a light in a very dark place. You know, at this point, Satan is cocky enough to go to heaven.
Yeah. That's deep, isn't it? I got this.
How bold do you have
I
to
got
be
this.
to walk in the gates of heaven when you know you don't belong there?
Yeah.
And say, "I have dominion."
Yeah.
And so what he was saying is that there's no one on earth that can hold your torch.
Wow. Wow. There's no one on earth that can hold your torch.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so when God challenged him, I wondered why he chose the route he did to challenge or to test Job. He chose loss.
He did. He did.
If he loses everything, he will curse you, because that disconnect, like I talked about in week one, that disconnect he knew was unnatural. He knew that the connections that we build, breaking those connections will cause despair. And despair is a place where death lingers.
Wow. Wow.
And so
Say that again, please.
despair is a place where death lingers.
Wow.
'Cause
We
there's
could just
no- there's
stop
no
and
hope.
just meditate on that.
There's no hope.
Yeah.
So in reading Job, I've identified the key players to his grief.
Okay.
So just to set the stage, he lost his kids, he lost his business,
10 kids,
10 kids,
10 children,
and he was a wealthy man.
and he was wealthy.
So all his earthly possessions, all his kids, everything you could think of, his health, his wife, he lost it all.
Lost his spouse.
Yes.
Yeah, you said that. He lost his spouse.
So how did Job stand strong? How did Job manage to keep it together through all of that? So first I want to identify the character's role. So his wife was another hurt person. When we go through grief, every once in a while, another person who's grieving, usually a family member who's grieving with you.
She experienced loss too. Those were her children.
Those were her kids. That was her wealth. That was her status.
Yes.
So she's angry. She's going through, you could see her in the stage of anger. She went directly to anger, her stage. And in that, and that's what happened with hurt people. You ever heard the saying, hurt people hurt people?
Yes, absolutely.
So she's in that stage of frame where she can't think right. So her advice, of course, we know, was not the best.
Right.
She said, curse God and just die.
Just end it all.
I know this is the wrong thing. I know you're going to die when you do it, but
End
curse
it.
God and die.
Let's end this.
I'm out.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Because she just couldn't take it. She was hurt and she had to give that hurt to someone. The second characters were his friends, who should have been encouraging, but couldn't understand what he was going through.
And before we plunge into his friends, let's pick them up in the next segment.
Okay.
Because that's fascinating. One of the last things we want to be told is that we're like the friends of Job when someone is grieving. And if you are grieving tonight, we wish you to have all of the peace that God offers. And so as we continue in the next segment, immediately after our special selections, we want you to join us and stay with us because Mr. Ruffin is going to open up what it means to be a true friend in the midst of grief.
Hello, everyone. I'm Linda Anderson.
2020.
My name is Miriam.
Hi, my name is Tammy, and I'm all in OU 2020.
My name is Pastor Rugless, and I'm all in OU 2020.
Hi, I'm Vivian English Washington.
And I'm Mark Washington.
And we're all in for OU 2020.
Hello, everyone. My name is Emo Parker, and I'm all in OU 2020.
Hi, I'm Sherry Wilson, and I am all in for my alma mater, Oakwood University. We're asking you to join us in the mission of Oakwood University and to support students.
I'm Leslie Pollard, and I'm all in with OU 2020. OU 2020 is your opportunity to do something that can make a difference in the lives of students. I'm standing here by the bell tower. For almost 70 years, this has been an iconic symbol of students in partnership with the alumni in making life better for all of our students. So go all in. OU 2020, give today, and you can make a difference in the life of a student. Thank you for joining us again, and we continue our discussion on grief, grief care, grief recovery, and grief management. And we're with John Ruffin. So, John, we started, and you were just beginning to tell us about the friends in the story of Job and their role.
So, the friends came into the picture because they knew their friend was hurting, and they had all the best intentions in mind to help him through this process. But they were looking at it from an external viewpoint. See, there's a difference between sympathy and empathy. You know, they could sympathize, but they couldn't empathize.
What's the difference between those two, sympathy and empathy?
So sympathy is understanding you're going through something, kind of paraphrasing. Whereas empathy is being able to experience or pull on the experience of what you're going through. So they wasn't necessarily touched. They saw him in his disease-ridden state, laying on the ground, loss of everything, and they're trying to pull, how in the world did this happen? They're trying, at this point, they were less concerned with Job and more concerned with their curiosity. And you know this.
What do you mean by that? I mean, everything you're saying is so profound. What do you mean they were more concerned about their own curiosity than they were about Job?
So human nature...
Because they never would have believed that. That's why they came.
That's why they had to see it.
Yeah.
See, human nature has to explain the world around them itself. That's why we dream. Because the things we can't explain in reality, we use our dreams, the dream state, to explain it sometimes. Because we have to process it. So imagine the scene. You came to the richest man's house and it's destroyed. It's burnt down. There's holes in the ceiling and the roof, and all of his beautiful livestock is gone, dead. Carcasses are laid on the ground. And then you come to your friend and he's riddled with sores and his clothes have been ripped and he's dirty with all the ashes he's been throwing on his head.
And you've never seen him like this before.
Never seen him like this. His beard has been ripped. I mean, his hair's pulled. And you're looking at him, and before you can even start to empathize, the only question in your mind is, how did you get here?
Yeah, how did this
really comfort him? They had to understand how he got there. And that's the mistake we make as friends to people who are grieving. I want to understand how you get here. And what we do is we make them relive their trauma.
Wow.
Now I got to tell you how I got to tell you how I was sitting in my house and my servant came to me and told me my kids died.
Now I got to rewalk through all of that.
I got to rewalk. Give me comfort.
Wow.
And not only that, now they took it a step further and let's see what you did wrong. Let's process where you messed up. Now,
and how would that help Job? I'm asking, I don't know, maybe it's a devil's advocate question. How was that going to help Job? Was it going to help him?
I don't know how Job survived.
Wow.
I would have probably, I have a cousin who is a nurse in a hospital in New York, caught corona.
Wow.
Came home, gave it to her mother and grandmother. Her grandmother passed.
Oh my goodness.
Now imagine the guilt she's feeling.
Oh my goodness.
But imagine how many people asked her, how do you feel now that your grandmother might have caught it from you and died because of you? Inadvertently. Like, they're not going to say it right out, but yeah. they
You think you caught it in the hospital? Yeah, it'd be like that. Yeah.
You think she got it from you?
You think she got it? How do you think she got it? Oh my goodness.
Imagine that, and you're trying to grieve.
Yeah.
I mean, that is tough. And I've heard this story more than once. More than once.
Yes.
So when we look at their character, this is why I think God was so angry at them. But there's a character we don't talk about.
So this is so really in Job's friends, we talk about positive examples and negative examples. They're also telling us what not to do.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
In terms of trying to comfort others who grieve.
Yes.
What not to do.
Yes. The first instinct is to understand, but that is not necessarily the healthiest thing to do. The healthiest thing to do is just to give comfort. Say, forget our differences, forget how this happened, forget where it's like is saying, hey, let me take care of a need. I'll figure out what happened. But let me help. What can I do to help? How can I help you? And that's so important because that alone, and I call it, sometimes in grief, we need a distraction. We need a friend to come and say, yo, I'm taking you out of this house. I'm getting you out of your clothes that you've been wearing for a week.
Come on, take you to lunch.
Yeah, I'm taking you to lunch. We're just going to hang out. We're going to laugh. I'm going to remind you that there's still a life to live.
Wow. Wow.
And so in this, even before God talked about his friends, there was another character that we don't talk about who showed his disgust towards the friends coming at Job. Now, the next character I want to talk about is Job himself. And this is important because...
So we've heard about Job's wife, we've heard about Job's friend, and now Job himself.
Job himself. So Job, I have to ask the question, how did Job manage to take this onslaught of attacks and still survive? And I've identified a couple of things that I think are key. And there's other examples in the Bible how God has used this to do so. And even in my example with my grandmother, there it is still shown. So number one is...
And for viewers who are just coming in with us this week.
3 years after her passing, I was still calling her phone.
Okay. Okay.
And I was listening to her answer machine, so everybody in my family was still grieving because we kept it going.
Right, right.
And then I was able to adjust that impacted me in my life.
Yes, which was feeding the homeless.
Feeding the homeless.
Okay.
So Job, there was 4 things that Job did in his life that helped him emotionally deal with grief. Number one, he had a very strong internal locus of control.
Tell us about that.
All right, so we have internal locus of control and an external locus of control. So of course, external means that our control is externally given. So, I pay for my house, I pay for my car, I did this, I did that, I work every day. I can point to external things that gives me the life I live. But there's also an internal locus of control. And that comes from something that isn't seen that allows you to have mental strength, where you're able to take in something that might be hurtful and process it in a way where you can keep moving. Yes, but I'm still alive. Yes, I got knocked down, but I will get back up. Yes, life is, even Job said, the sun shines on the good. Demonstrated his internal locus of control. He had a very strong locus of control.
It's almost like he never lost perspective, did he?
Never.
He never lost perspective.
And the reason he did that was
the Lord gives, the Lord takes away.
That's right.
Blessed be the name of the Lord.
That's right. Yeah. He understood that none of that stuff that he lost can take away from who he is inside.
Wow.
Now, the second is, and I can imagine when his friends were asking him and he was searching himself, I'm going to project here that he had some type of monument he could look at to remind him of the goodness of the Lord. We might have pictures. And when we have grief and we lost someone and we're going through it and, maybe a kid lost his father and why did you leave me so early? You must have hated me. And then they look at the picture of the father having them on their neck and walking them around. And he remembers how his father used to take Sundays off and drive him in his car. And he's you know what? You did love me. You didn't do this on purpose.
Yes.
I can move forward.
Yes.
You have some type of monument. Think about the children.
And memories can be a monument.
Yes.
What you just said was a memory, whether mental or physical.
That's
can be
right.
A monument, yes.
Notice after every traumatic event with Israel, when they got out of the land of Egypt, what did God make them do?
Build
a monument to remind them of where they came from. And for me, my monument was feeding the homeless. It reminded me of how powerful her life was and the life I should want to live.
Amen.
The second was looking for or evaluating and processing rightly.
And this was the third one.
This is the third.
Third.
The
yes.
third.
The second was the memory, the monument. Yes.
The monument. Third is processing rightly. So his friends were throwing accusations, and every one he would rationalize with reality. He says, "You say I might have cursed God or did God wrong, but no, I'm looking at my calendar." And I talk to clients all the time, and I tell them, because we're not perfect. But I remind them, I said, our God is not petty. He's not petty. If you are on the path, if you're focused on him and you're trying, why wouldn't he want to save you? Because a lot of people, I have grown men panicking now. Like, man, I got to get my life right with God because God is coming. This is a clear sign.
Yes,
God is on his way. And I mean grown men who are panicking and searching their souls and so forth. And I'm telling them, you got two options. You either look at your past and say, hey, I'm doing okay. Or you say, hey, I need to work on it. And as long as you got breath in your body, work on it.
Yes.
And so Job was able to look at that reality of things. The last one is he was able to give God what he couldn't handle.
Amen. That's powerful.
So you ever heard of the serenity prayer?
I have.
I'm going to chop it up. But the prayer basically states, like, God, help me deal with the things that I can. Help me let go of the things that I can't, and let me know
wisdom to know the difference.
To know the difference.
To know the difference.
You'll be amazed. There's certain things people are carrying around that they should not even be dealing with. That's above your pay grade. Give it to God. And it was just like, God, hey, this isn't for me. I can't deal with this. All I can deal with is what I can control, what I can look at. And so he was able to give God what he couldn't handle.
Amen. Well, let me see if I can remember the 4 things that we should be doing as we navigate through grief. Number 1, we should be building monument. No, that's number 2.
No, that's number 2. Monument.
Internal locus of control.
Yes.
Then number 2, we should be building monument. The third is we should be looking at reality.
Yes.
For what it really, really says. And then, of course, the 4th that you just said is give it to God, because we cannot carry everything.
Yeah.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we end another broadcast, but we thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week on Oakwood Praise.